Are you ready to dive into a gripping, emotional, and profoundly meaningful story? A racist police officer abuses his power and humiliates a young man, unaware that he is actually an FBI agent. This story is not just a thrilling journey, but also a powerful wake up call about justice, courage, and the strength of truth. Hit like to support us in bringing more inspiring stories to life. Don't forget to click subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest videos. And share this story with your friends and family because justice only truly matters when it is shared far and wide. Tune in now and leave your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about the actions of FBI agent Marcus? Do we have the courage to stand up against injustice like he did? We want to hear from you. The city of Chicago felt stiflingly oppressive on this sweltering late summer afternoon. Special Agent Marcus Carter drove his sleek black SUV down the crowded streets leading to the city center. Outwardly, he appeared calm and composed, but inside, his thoughts spun relentlessly. A 3 month long investigation had just reached a significant breakthrough, leaving Marcus working tirelessly to piece everything together. He wiped beads of sweat from his brow and spoke, his eyes instinctively darting to the rearview mirror. A faint sense of unease crept into his mind, a feeling all too familiar to someone like him, a black man navigating a world that didn't always welcome him. Even as an FBI agent, Marcus understood better than most that the shiny badge pinned to his chest wasn't always enough to shield him from judgmental gazes. Glancing at the clock, Marcus noted it was nearing 5 p.m. Exhaustion tugged at him, but so did a quiet sense of pride. Working for the FBI was more than a job. It was a mission, one he had chosen years ago. It was his way of breaking barriers and proving that he could not only meet expectations but exceed them, outperforming many who doubted him. The SUV cruised through a bustling intersection, traffic lights casting their reflections onto the windshield. Everything seemed normal, yet Marcus had no idea that today would mark a pivotal turning point in his life. Chicago in the summer always carried a peculiar charm, a blend of scorching heat and the relentless hustle of a city that never slept. Marcus Carter had grown accustomed to this rhythm, even grown fond of it. But today, as the sun's glaring rays bounced off the asphalt, all he wanted was to return to the office, file his report, and rest after a grueling week of work. His black SUV glided through the downtown district and where towering skyscrapers reflected the blinding sunlight. The streets were bustling with pedestrians, the air filled with honking horns and the clatter of conversations spilling from roadside cafes. Marcus wondered if any of these people understood what he was dealing with. The investigation he'd been pursuing was nearing its conclusion, but the pressure was mounting every day. Each detail of the case replayed in his mind like a looping film reel. The faces of drug traffickers, the terrified eyes of innocent people caught in their schemes, and the moments he had stared danger in the face. Marcus sighed quietly. He had chosen this path not only to prove himself, but to dismantle the prejudices society had imposed on him, a black man in law enforcement. But even as he reassured himself of his strength, Marcus couldn't deny the truth. Every day felt like a battle. Not just against criminals, but against the very system he served, a system that didn't always support people like him. He recalled the doubtful glances from colleagues, the murmurs behind his back when he was assigned to a high-profile case. Marcus knew he had to work twice, sometimes 3 times as hard, just to prove his worth. Lost in thought, he glanced at the rearview mirror and noticed a police car following close behind. Its red and blue lights flashed, and the short wail of the siren signaled him to pull over. Marcus frowned slightly, instinctively slowing down and steering his vehicle to the side of the road. He checked his speedometer, well within the limit. License plate? Perfectly valid. What reason could there possibly be for stopping him? A wave of irritation rose within him, but Marcus held it back. He knew better than anyone that staying calm was essential in situations like this. The police car stopped behind him. Watching through the mirror, Marcus saw a tall, white officer step out. His uniform was impeccably pressed, a firearm holstered at his side, and his demeanor radiated an oppressive authority that thickened the air around them. The officer approached slowly, his cold eyes scanning Marcus with an unhidden scrutiny. Marcus rolled down his window, maintaining his composure. "Good afternoon, officer. Is there a problem?" he asked, his voice polite but firm. The officer, whose badge read Daniels, barely glanced at him before speaking. Driver's license and vehicle registration, Daniels demanded, his tone curt and icy. Marcus furrowed his brow but complied. He handed over his license and registration through the window. I'm an FBI agent, on my way back from an assignment, Marcus said, his voice steady but with a hint of patience as he reached into his jacket pocket and produced his badge. Daniels glanced at the FBI badge, but instead of showing respect or acknowledgement, his expression twisted with disdain. That badge doesn't mean anything here, pal. Step out of the vehicle, Daniels barked, his voice rising in pitch and sharpness. The statement struck Marcus like a blow to his pride. He felt a surge of heat in his chest, but years of experience allowed him to keep his emotions in check. He knew his rights and recognized that this was unjust. But confronting an officer like Daniels, Marcus understood that any rash reaction would only escalate the situation. Officer, Marcus began, his tone calm but resolute, I've clearly identified myself as a federal agent. I need you to explain why I'm being ordered to step out of the car. Daniels smirked, his lips curling into a sneer. Step out of the car or I'll drag you out. Who do you think you are, the president? Marcus could feel the eyes of bystanders on him. They whispered among themselves, but none stepped forward to intervene. It was a scene he had witnessed countless times, the silence of the crowd in the face of injustice. Slowly, Marcus opened his car door, raising his hands to show he was unarmed. Marcus stepped out of the car slowly, his hands remaining in plain view to avoid any possible misunderstandings. He was no stranger to handling himself cautiously, especially in tense situations like this. But this time, he could feel the danger more acutely. It wasn't because he feared Daniels, no. It was because he knew that a police officer with such an attitude could do anything if left unchecked. Daniels stood tall, imposing, his hand resting on the holster of his gun. A silent but clear threat. He said nothing more, only stared at Marcus with a judgmental glare. Put your hands on the car. Now, he barked, his tone clipped and commanding. Marcus didn't move. Officer, I've made it clear. I am an FBI agent, and I am currently on duty. You have no authority to stop me without probable cause. Daniels took a step closer, his face mere inches from Marcus. My cause is that you look suspicious. Now follow the order or you'll regret it. Marcus drew in a deep breath, forcing himself to keep his anger in check. You're abusing your authority, and you know it, he said, his tone steady but each word carrying weight. Daniels let out a derisive laugh. Abusing authority? You think that FBI badge makes you special? Around here, I'm the one with the authority. Hands on the car. The eyes of bystanders continued to fixate on them. Marcus noticed someone had taken out their phone to record the encounter, but no one stepped forward to intervene. He knew all too well that escalating the situation could lead to far worse outcomes. Reluctantly, he decided to comply, choosing to prioritize his safety for the moment. Marcus slowly placed his hands on the hood of the car, feeling the heat from the sun radiating off the metal surface. Daniel stepped behind him, swiftly grabbing his arms and cuffing him without another word. The pressure of the cuffs bit into Marcus's wrists, sending a sharp jolt of pain up his arms. This is a blatant abuse of power, he said, his voice calm but strained with tension. Your actions will have consequences. Daniel smirked dismissively. You think I care? Someone like you doesn't stand a chance here. Marcus turned his head, locking his piercing gaze on Daniels. I won't let this end here, he said firmly, his voice unwavering. Daniels didn't respond. Instead, he roughly pulled Marcus toward his patrol car. Get in. I've got some questions for you back at the station, Daniels said, his face cold and full of authority. The patrol car rolled through deserted streets, carrying Marcus to a secluded area on the outskirts of town. Unlike the bustling atmosphere of central police stations, this place was eerily quiet, almost unsettling. Marcus sat in the back seat, his hands cuffed, his eyes fixed on the window. He took a deep breath, trying to maintain his composure. This isn't the main station, Marcus said sharply. His tone was steady, but there was a piercing edge to it. Where are you taking me? Daniels glanced at him through the rearview mirror, a smirk creeping across his face. We need a quieter place to talk. You like that, don't you? Marcus didn't reply, but his mind was working rapidly. He knew Daniels was using this situation to assert dominance, possibly to cover something up. But what? Marcus needed to find a way to protect himself. The car came to a stop in front of a small, dilapidated building, surrounded by trees and shrouded in the shadows of the setting sun. Daniels stepped out, opened the back door, and yanked Marcus out roughly. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy, almost suffocating. A few officers in the station cast indifferent glances in their direction. None of them questioned why Daniels had brought in a handcuffed man. It all seemed disturbingly routine to them. Daniels shoved Marcus into a small interrogation room, its dim light from a hanging bulb only adding to the oppressive feeling of the space. He forced Marcus into a chair and stood across from him, arms crossed over his chest. Now, Daniels began, his tone dripping with false authority, as if he was completely in control of the situation. Tell me who you really are and why you were running. Marcus let out a soft laugh, one devoid of humor. I wasn't running. You stopped me for no reason, detained me illegally, and let me remind you again, I'm an FBI agent. Daniels stared at him, his expression filled with contempt. FBI, huh? Don't make me laugh. Do you have any idea how many people pretend to be agents just to get out of trouble? Marcus remained silent, his eyes never leaving Daniels. He knew that saying anything further would only provoke him more. But he also knew he needed a plan, and fast. The interrogation room felt oppressively heavy. Marcus sat on the cold metal chair, his cuffed hands resting on the table in front of him. Though he maintained a calm exterior, a storm of anger swirled inside him. Across the room, Daniels paced back and forth like a predator circling its prey, his eyes gleaming with defiance. Well, buddy, Daniels finally said, his voice drawn out and dripping with mockery, if you really are an FBI agent, I'm sure you wouldn't mind if I did a little verification, right? Marcus didn't respond immediately. He stared directly at Daniels, trying to decipher the officer's cold and calculating gaze. I've already made myself clear. My badge is genuine, and you are exceeding your authority. I will not answer any further questions without a lawyer or an FBI representative. Daniels burst into loud laughter, the sound echoing in the cramped room. A lawyer? The FBI? He leaned on the table, his face inches from Marcus's. Do you even know where you are? This isn't some federal headquarters. This is my territory, and here I am the law. Marcus held his gaze steady, even as he braced himself internally. He had no doubts now. Daniels wasn't just abusing his power, he was hiding something. Marcus couldn't let him manipulate the situation any further. You're making a big mistake, Officer Daniels, Marcus said, his voice low but firm. This doesn't just jeopardize your career, it will have serious legal consequences. Daniels narrowed his eyes, his lips curling into a cold smile. You think I'm afraid? He sneered, straightening up. He turned and walked toward the door, but paused to deliver a parting shot. Sit tight. I'll be back with some answers for you. The door slammed shut, leaving Marcus alone in the room. The ticking of the wall clock filled the silence, each second stretching into eternity. Marcus took a deep breath, his eyes drifting to the corner of the room where a security camera blinked. He knew every move he made was being recorded, but perhaps this could work to his advantage. Evidence of Daniel's abuse of power might come in handy. The door creaked open again, this time revealing a younger officer. Average build, short brown hair, and a face that betrayed unease. The officer hesitated for a moment before stepping inside and carefully closing the door behind him. I'm Officer Ethan Miller, he said, his voice low and uncertain. Daniels asked me to get some information from you. Marcus studied Ethan for a moment. The man was different from Daniels. His eyes lacked malice, instead carrying a glimmer of hesitation, even regret. Marcus sensed this might be an opportunity. You know who I am, don't you? Marcus asked, his tone calm but firm. You know what Daniels is doing is wrong. Ethan glanced nervously at the door, as if fearing someone might overhear. I'm just following orders, he stammered, his hands trembling slightly as he clutched a pen. This isn't my problem. Not your problem? Marcus raised an eyebrow, his sharp gaze piercing. You know I'm an FBI agent. You know Daniels is overstepping his authority. If you stay silent, you become complicit in this injustice. Ethan drew a deep breath, clearly wrestling with an internal struggle. He set the pen down on the table, his eyes meeting Marcus's, as if searching for reassurance. Daniels, he doesn't just do this to you, Ethan said, his voice faltering. He's abused his power with others too. but no one dares to stand up to him. He controls this entire station. Then why won't you speak out? Marcus pressed, his gaze unwavering. I can help you, but you need to make the right choice. Ethan hesitated, the conflict evident on his face. Finally, he nodded, a flicker of resolve lighting up his eyes. I'll help you, but we have to act fast before Daniels comes back. Ethan stood up, pulling a key from his pocket to unlock Marcus's handcuffs. Follow me, he whispered urgently. We don't have much time. Marcus followed closely behind Ethan as they moved stealthily down the police station's dimly lit hallway. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered, emitting a faint, buzzing sound. The silence of the station was unnerving, but Marcus knew they couldn't let their guard down. Daniels could return at any moment. Where's your car? Marcus asked, his voice low but urgent. Ethan pointed toward the far end of the hallway. The back door. I'll get you out of here in my car. Marcus nodded, but before stepping toward the door, he paused and turned to Ethan. Are you sure you want to do this? This could cost you your job. Ethan stopped, meeting Marcus's gaze directly. If I don't, I'll live with regret for the rest of my life. I can't let Daniels keep doing this. Marcus saw the sincerity in Ethan's eyes. He nodded in acknowledgement, and the two quickly moved to the back door, stepping out into the dark parking lot. Ethan unlocked his patrol car and gestured for Marcus to get in the passenger seat. Hold on tight, Ethan said as he started the engine. Daniels is going to realize we're gone any minute now. The car sped out of the lot, its headlights cutting through the night. Both men understood that this was only the beginning of a dangerous chase. The patrol car sped out of the parking lot, tires screeching against the damp asphalt. Marcus sat in the passenger seat, his eyes glued to the rearview mirror. The headlights of Daniel's patrol car were not yet visible, but Marcus knew it was only a matter of time. Where are we heading? Marcus asked, his voice calm but tinged with urgency. Ethan kept his eyes fixed on the road ahead. I know a back road out of town. If we move fast enough, Daniels won't catch up. Escaping isn't the point, Marcus said, his eyes burning with determination. We need evidence, something to make him pay. Ethan glanced briefly at Marcus, his face tight with tension. Evidence? Daniels doesn't leave traces. He controls everything. No one is flawless, not even Daniels, Marcus replied. We just need to find the crack in his armor. At that moment, the shrill sound of a siren pierced the night, shattering the silence in the car. Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror. A set of red and blue lights flashed, and there was no mistaking the predator closing in behind them. Daniel's patrol car barreled forward, its headlights glaring like a hunter locking onto its prey. Damn it, Ethan growled through clenched teeth, slamming his foot on the gas. He's faster than I thought. Their patrol car surged ahead, weaving through narrow streets with sharp turns. The faint streetlights barely illuminated the path, and the surrounding darkness seemed to swallow everything. Ethan gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles turning white. Beside him, Marcus kept his eyes trained on the mirror. Drive carefully, Marcus said, his tone firm but steady. We need to keep our distance, but we can't afford to lose him completely. Ethan nodded, though the strain on his face was evident. If he catches us. No ifs, Marcus cut him off. We won't let that happen. The road ahead narrowed, flanked by towering trees that cast eerie, elongated shadows across the pavement. Ethan suddenly swerved to avoid a fallen tree blocking their path, the tires screeching as the car skidded over loose gravel. Hold on, Ethan yelled as the car tilted dangerously to one side, narrowly avoiding sliding off the edge of the road. Marcus gripped the door handle tightly, his eyes sharp with focus. Are you sure this road leads out? Positive, Ethan replied, though his voice carried less conviction than before. I've been down here once before, but it was during the day. The siren wailed louder, closer. Daniels was closing the gap, and Marcus knew he wouldn't stop until they were cornered. The tension in the car thickened as the chase hurtled toward a breaking point. A violent jolt from behind sent Ethan's car swerving uncontrollably. Daniels had caught up, deliberately ramming into them. Ethan quickly regained control of the wheel, but another hard hit nearly sent them careening off the edge of the road. He's trying to run us off, Ethan shouted, his voice frantic. Stay calm, Marcus ordered, his eyes locked on Daniel's car in the rearview mirror. I've got an idea. Ethan glanced at Marcus, panic etched on his face. An idea? We can't outrun him on this road. Marcus swiftly pulled a pen from his jacket pocket, unscrewing the top to reveal a small USB drive. There's a case file on Daniels in my SUV, a file that could take him down. If we can get back to my car? Go back? Ethan yelled, his voice climbing with disbelief. Are you insane? Daniels will kill us before we get close. Marcus didn't respond, his eyes narrowing as he stared at Daniels through the mirror. Determination burned in his gaze. We have to try. Marcus and Ethan quickly devised a risky plan. Lead Daniels onto a winding side road, then circle back to retrieve the USB from Marcus's SUV. It was far from foolproof, but it was their best shot. The road ahead grew rougher, filled with bumps and loose gravel, but Daniels kept up the chase, his headlights flashing menacingly behind them. Ethan made a sharp right turn onto a narrow dirt path, the tires crunching over rocks as they sped forward. Daniels followed closely, his lights strobing through the trees like a predator zeroing in on its prey. Marcus rolled down his window, leaning slightly out to gauge the distance between their car and Daniels. All right, Marcus said urgently. We're getting close to where I parked. Be ready to stop. Ethan nodded, though tension gripped his features. He pressed harder on the gas, navigating a tight curve that nearly sent Daniels crashing into a guardrail. Daniels swerved at the last second, keeping his pursuit relentless. They finally neared Marcus's black SUV parked just off the roadside. Ethan slammed the brakes, the tires screeching to a halt and leaving long skid marks on the pavement. Without wasting a second, Marcus bolted from the car, sprinting toward his SUV. Behind them, Daniels screeched to a stop, leaping out with his gun drawn. Stop right there, Daniels bellowed, his voice echoing through the night as he leveled the weapon at Marcus. His eyes glinted with wild fury. Marcus froze, raising his hands slowly. But before Daniels could act, Ethan appeared from behind, gripping a metal rod and swinging it forcefully at Daniels' hand. The gun clattered to the ground as Daniels howled in pain. Daniels spun around, roaring in rage. A chaotic struggle broke out between the three men. With his superior strength, Daniels quickly overpowered Ethan, shoving him to the ground. But Marcus wasn't about to give up. He charged, putting every ounce of his strength into subduing Daniels. In the chaos, Marcus finally gained the upper hand. He retrieved the USB from his SUV and turned to Ethan, pulling him to his feet. Let's go, Marcus shouted. Both men sprinted back to Ethan's car, leaving Daniels sprawled on the ground, gasping for breath. Marcus knew this was far from over. Daniels wouldn't stop, and they needed to act fast before he could regroup and strike again. Marcus and Ethan scrambled into the patrol car, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. Though temporarily incapacitated, Daniels wasn't giving up. Staggering to his feet, his face twisted with unbridled rage, he grabbed his radio from his belt and barked orders with a voice full of venom. Reinforcements, get to my location immediately! I'm not letting them get away! Daniels roared, his voice cutting through the night air like a blade, sending a shiver down Ethan's spine. We need to go now! Ethan shouted, his hands trembling as he fumbled to fit the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life, and the car shot forward, peeling away from the scene. Marcus sat in the passenger seat, gripping the USB tightly, the sole piece of evidence that could save them. His mind churned, caught between anger, anxiety, and an unwavering determination to ensure Daniels faced justice. We don't have much time, Marcus said, his voice steady but sharp. Daniels is calling in his entire force to hunt us down. We need a safe place to access the data on this USB and send it to the FBI. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. I know a place. There's an abandoned warehouse up north. We can hide there for a few hours, but we won't have long before Daniels tracks us down. Marcus nodded, his eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. Daniels' car was no longer visible, but Marcus knew better than to believe they were in the clear. The drive to the abandoned warehouse felt agonizingly long. Every passing second burned like an ember in Marcus's mind, testing his patience and resolve. The darkness of the night enveloped them, with only the car's headlights slicing through the void ahead. Ethan gripped the steering wheel tightly, his expression a mixture of determination and fear. Do you think this USB has enough to take Daniels down? He asked, his voice shaky. Marcus turned to him, his gaze firm. If what I've stored on here is intact, illegal transactions, names of those involved, then it won't just bring down Daniels. The entire network behind him will crumble. Ethan was silent for a moment before speaking softly. I never thought I'd end up going against one of my own. But Daniels, he's unlike anyone I've ever known. He's a monster hiding in plain sight. Marcus nodded. Doing the right thing isn't always easy, but if we don't, no one else will. As the car neared the warehouse, Marcus caught sight of headlights in the distance. Not one but two patrol cars racing toward them from the opposite direction. His heart pounded. They've found us, he said, his voice edged with urgency. Ethan gripped the steering wheel tighter. Damn it! We can't stop! Hold on, he shouted, slamming his foot on the gas. The car surged forward, the engine roaring like a beast in flight. The approaching patrol cars activated their sirens, the red and blue lights flashing in chaotic bursts that illuminated the dark night. We can't face them head on, Marcus said. Find another route. Ethan darted a glance through the windshield before decisively jerking the wheel, veering the car onto a smaller, narrower road that cut into a dense forest. The pursuing patrol cars quickly adjusted their trajectory, staying hot on their trail. The forest road was treacherous, filled with obstacles that turned every second into a struggle for control. Towering trees on either side cloaked the path in heavy shadows, making visibility nearly impossible. Ethan fought to keep the car steady, but it jolted and rattled as the tires rolled over large rocks and uneven ground. Watch out ahead, Marcus shouted as a fallen tree appeared in their path. Ethan swerved hard, the car spinning in a full circle before regaining balance. We can't keep running forever, Ethan said, his breaths coming fast and shallow. He's going to trap us sooner or later. Marcus clenched his jaw. We need another plan. If we can't escape, we fight. Ethan turned to look at Marcus, his face a mixture of shock and fear. Fight? Daniels has an entire squad and it's just the two of us. Marcus allowed himself a faint, grim smile. Sometimes two is enough, as long as you have the courage. When they finally reached the abandoned warehouse, Marcus and Ethan wasted no time jumping out of the car. They knew their window of opportunity was closing fast. Daniels and his reinforcements would be swarming the area in minutes. Marcus quickly opened his briefcase, pulling out a small laptop. Plugging in the USB, his fingers flew across the keyboard as he worked to access the critical data in record time. Hurry up, Ethan yelled, his voice trembling as the wail of sirens grew louder. Marcus didn't respond, his focus completely locked on the laptop screen. Lines of data began to appear, financial transactions, names of key individuals in the smuggling ring, and damning evidence directly tying Daniels to the criminal network. It's done, Marcus said, his voice steady and resolute. We've got everything we need. But at that moment, the warehouse door burst open with a deafening bang. Daniels stormed in, a gun in his hand pointed directly at them. His face twisted with fury and his voice boomed like thunder. Game over, you fools! Hand over that data! Now! Daniels bellowed, his finger twitching dangerously near the trigger. Marcus stood up, holding the laptop tightly in his hand. His voice was steady, carrying a sense of finality. You can't keep hiding, Daniels. We have the evidence, and you'll have to face the consequences. Daniels smirked, his hand tensing as he stared down Marcus. Evidence? That so-called evidence won't matter when you're out of the way, he said coldly. Before Daniels could act further, Ethan charged at him from the side, throwing all his weight into knocking him down. The object in Daniels' hand slipped away, sliding across the floor. A tense struggle broke out between Daniels and Ethan, their movements and strained breaths echoing throughout the room. Marcus didn't hesitate. He quickly retrieved the fallen object and leveled it toward Daniels. Stop, Daniels. It's over. Daniels lay on the floor, panting heavily as he glared up at Marcus. His expression burned with defiance, but Marcus could see something new in his eyes, a flicker of hesitation, maybe even fear. Acting swiftly, Marcus and Ethan secured Daniels, ensuring he couldn't resist further. Moments later, the sound of approaching sirens filled the air, signaling the arrival of the FBI. When the agents entered, they found Daniels restrained, surrounded by the critical evidence Marcus had secured. The sight of him being taken into custody marked a significant step toward justice and accountability. The wail of sirens pierced through the dark night, shrouding the warehouse. Sleek black SUVs with the FBI emblem emblazoned on their sides sped onto the scene, their headlights cutting across the rugged ground. Marcus stood in the middle of the warehouse, watching as his team emerged from the vehicles, fully armed. A wave of relief washed over him, mingled with lingering tension. Ethan stood beside Marcus, his entire body trembling from exhaustion and pent-up emotions. He looked at Marcus, his eyes filled with fear and uncertainty. "Will it end here?" Ethan asked, his voice so quiet it was barely audible. Marcus nodded, his gaze shifting to Daniels, who lay bound on the floor. "He won't escape this time, not after tonight." Special Agent in Charge, Sarah Williams, strode purposefully into the warehouse. Her face was stern, but her eyes reflected trust as they met Marcus's. "Carter, are you okay?" Sarah asked, her voice warm yet professional. "I'm fine, ma'am," Marcus replied, extending the USB drive toward her. "This has all the evidence to indict Daniels and dismantle his entire network." Sarah took the USB, her sharp eyes flicking to Daniels, who was being escorted by two other agents. "You've done well, Marcus, but this isn't over. We'll need to dig deeper to uncover everyone involved." Marcus nodded firmly. "I understand, but tonight Daniels has been exposed. He won't destroy any more lives." Daniels, still restrained, let out a loud, mocking laugh that echoed through the warehouse. His voice was hoarse, but filled with disdain. "You think you've won?" he sneered. "I've got people behind me, people you wouldn't dare touch. I'll walk free before you even get me to trial." Ethan, standing a few steps away, clenched his fists tightly. "You can't run forever, Daniels. Tonight, you've already lost." After Daniels was taken away, Marcus and Sarah, along with her team, regrouped in the warehouse to assess the situation. Marcus recounted the entire sequence of events, from being stopped by Daniels to his eventual escape and confrontation with him. Ethan, though not part of the FBI, cautiously added his perspective, his voice tinged with guilt. Sarah listened intently, her sharp eyes catching every detail. When Marcus finished, she turned to Ethan. "Officer Miller, your actions tonight were commendable. But are you aware that assisting a federal agent without reporting to your superiors could put you in a difficult position?" Ethan took a deep breath before nodding. "I know, but I couldn't stand by after seeing what Daniels was doing. He wasn't just abusing his power, he was ruining lives. I'm willing to accept the consequences if necessary." Sarah paused for a moment, then nodded. "You did the right thing, but this doesn't end with Daniels. We need to uncover the entire network he was part of, and your testimony will be crucial." 3 days later, news of Daniels' arrest dominated headlines. Photos of him in an orange prison jumpsuit, his eyes filled with anger and defeat, became a symbol of the downfall of a corrupt figure. Simultaneously, the evidence from Marcus's USB was made public, exposing the extensive corruption and smuggling network Daniels was involved in. The FBI quickly launched a deeper investigation, leading to the arrests of numerous officials and officers connected to the scandal. The list of victims affected by Daniels and his associates outraged the public. The demand for systemic reform within law enforcement grew louder by the day. When Daniels appeared in court, his face was pale and his eyes vacant. Marcus testified as a key witness, standing before the jury to recount the entire truth. Ethan also took the stand, confronting his former colleagues for the first time and exposing the full extent of Daniels' actions. Justice, long overdue, had finally begun to take its course. The case concluded with a resounding victory for Marcus. He was not only recognized for his bravery and perseverance, but also became a symbol of the fight against injustice. His colleagues and superiors expressed their respect, and the praise from the public reassured him that his efforts had been worthwhile. For Marcus, however, this victory was more than just the restoration of his honor. It was a reminder that the fight for justice never truly ends. His gaze shifted to Ethan, who stood quietly in the corner of the room, his eyes now filled with determination. "You did great," Marcus said, walking over to Ethan. "You didn't just help me, you helped countless others." Ethan smiled faintly and nodded. "I just did what was right, but I think you've shown me that doing the right thing isn't always easy." Marcus stepped out of the courthouse, the sunlight warming his face. Walking through the throng of reporters and the cheers of supporters, he felt a rare sense of peace. He knew that while the road ahead would still be fraught with challenges, he would continue to fight, not just for himself, but for those who couldn't speak out. Ethan followed closely behind Marcus, feeling proud for the first time in his life for standing on the side of justice. They shook hands, exchanging no words, for none were needed. Both understood that on that night they had accomplished something extraordinary. This isn't just a story about escape, it's a relentless battle between justice and injustice. Marcus Carter, a courageous FBI agent, refused to back down in the face of abuse of power by a corrupt police officer. But this story isn't just about one man, it's about all of us, about having the courage to stand up against what's wrong, no matter the cost. So, what will you do? Will you act when faced with injustice, or will you stay silent like the crowd that watched Marcus endure humiliation that day? Let this story inspire you. Justice doesn't come naturally, it's something we must fight for. Thank you for staying with us through this journey. If this story resonated with you, please hit like, share it, and subscribe to the channel to join us in bringing more meaningful stories to life. See you in the next video. And remember, truth always prevails.